Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Generations. And this episode is it's a monthly hosting by the National Comadres Network. And we're excited. We're excited that you're joining us today to hear this wonderful conversation amongst women and to hear things. And we always say this, and we'll probably never stop saying it, but I guarantee you will hear something today that is going to help you maybe see something a little bit more clear or even inspire you to look at things a little bit different. But our hope is that we always leave you a little bit better than when we began. My name is Debra Camarillo, and I'm the proud daughter of Esteban Leo Camarillo and Anita Figueroa. And I have the pleasure of co-hosting this podcast with my comadre, Maestra Susanna Armijo. Comadre, how you doing, comadre?
Okay, down here in LA area, just as always giving thanks to Mother, Father, Creator for another precious day of life and breath, literally. I say that a lot more literally these days. And very intentional, and so honored to be here back with you, Maestra Debra, and our special guest. So excited. But it's doing good. The weather is under the covers with the clouds and just blessing us with that rain that we need for the plants and all of that. Just embracing that. You know, these days this weather just changes, you know, from one day to the next, we just never know. I always kid around and I tell them, I think the weather's in menopause. It's hot, it's cold, it's crying, it's all over the place. Anyway, it's a blessing. To have that rain nourishing our plants and trees and nature, the animals. So gracias a Dios for that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And comadre, I just got to say, it's so good to be back in the saddle again with you.
Oh,
you know, our last podcast, we shared about your journey.
Yes.
And the lessons that were learned, along that journey. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just so grateful to the Creator, the ancestors, that we're back again doing what we do, you know, and it just feels like complete, right? Because we've been in this adventure together for a little while.
It was good to be back in the car and cruising, comadre. Maestra.
Yeah, I tell you, it feels good today. We have another special guest, which is very exciting. We're going to have a plática. And so if you're listening along with us, wherever it is that you are, I just want to say it again. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. But the intention of this podcast is healing generations. When we say healing generations, it's the generations that we carry within us, and it's the generations that we sit along with. And I want you to think about that a little bit, because inside of us, we carry a legacy. And a legacy sometimes that comes with its, positive and negative. Right. And there's times that there's things that we need to let go that we've inherited, right? Through our DNA, through that passing down of, those gifts that are good and not so good, right? That historical trauma, but also to embrace new things, embrace things that are going to really fortify and nourish your life and my life. And so as we have this conversation today, this plática, I want you to open your mind. This is your time as we sit together and have another wonderful conversation. Comadre, do us the pleasure. Who do we have today? And let's get started.
Absolutely. It's such an honor, always an honor. We have a very special guest for you today, and for us as well. She is Miss Ana Barrera, comadre for many years. So honored to have you here, Ana. Such a a dedication. You're such a vessel for Creator in so many ways. I know, just knowing you personally, your journey has been very long, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of wisdom, and it's beautiful to see, have experienced how you work with the students, all the work that you do, and how they just love you so much. You just have so much love to give, and beautiful. I think the thing that stands out for me the most, being in your presence, I just feel safe. You just have this mother bear energy that is just protecting all of us, and it was very, very heartwarming when we were able to work with you and spend time at your school. She's a professional school teacher, a true maestra, 27 years throughout California, from South Central Los Angeles to East Los Angeles to Calexico and Salinas. In 2022, she was awarded Teacher of the Year for Monterey County High School Teacher of the Year, Salinas Union High School District Teacher of the Year. That says so much just right there, born maestra. And those students are just so fortunate to have you and all that wisdom that you have to share and have your support and creating that safe place for all of our students. So important. She's worked for many years for the Gang Violence Bridging Project, the Pat Brown Institute of Public Affairs, Cal State University, Los Angeles. Board of Advisor for Artists Link through 2016 to 2024. Advocate for Safe AG, Safe Schools. She is a mother. She is a sister. She is a comrade, an advocate, maestra in her own right, professionally, and just the way she walks her life, the way she lives her life. A very professional agitator as well. But we welcome you here, Ana, as our comadre and our hermana. So honored to have you in our Comadres Network and our Girasol sister, that beautiful sisterhood we've been able to create together. So I'd like to introduce you. I'm going to pass you the palabra and let you just say a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, the work that you're connected to, and whatever comes from your heart, comadre.
Thank you very much. Ana María Barrera, Ulloa, Guzmán, Pedrosa, Tobar, Aguayo, García, Rodríguez. Deep roots in Chucántiro, Michoacán, Purepecha, on the side of my father, José Amparo Barrera. And then on the side of my mother, Huichol, out of Los Yañez, near Michoacanejo, Jalisco, and Teocaltiche area, down in Mexico. I appreciate being here and being invited. Right now, I'm in the territory of the Gabrielino Tonga tribes in the San Gabriel Valley. And I do a lot of my work up in the Salinas Valley, which is the Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen Nation region. So acknowledging all our peoples in these lands of the Americas, the indigenous Turtle Island, and just recognizing that, we are deeply rooted in this region. And it's beautiful to be a part of the National Comadres Network and, also learning about our own history and our roots and acknowledging that as we take space in these areas, in these lands. So I appreciate with the invitation and being able to speak and talk a little to our jóvenes and our women about what is much needed in our communities.
So, Ana, as we get started, I know people are wondering, so who is this lady? ¿Quién es esta mujer? Right? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about you. So how did you, on your journey, get to where you're at? Where do you come from? I know you mentioned, your gente, but actually, how did you travel all those different places to get to where you're at today?
Well, I was born and raised in East LA, product of Garfield High School, Puro Bulldogs. Growing up in East LA, I got to see advocacy through the work of my mom. My mom's always been an advocate. She was involved in, local school board races, supporting, I think it was Vicky Castro back in the day, and working with the mothers of East LA, advocating for their children to have access to higher education and quality education. And so I remember always seeing my mom and her advocacy, and as her interpreter, having to stand in the middle to speak the truth she was wanting people to understand. I went to a special school called Eastman Avenue Elementary. I was back in the 70s, first generation, part of the bilingual programs at Eastman. And, right now I'm in Southern California because I'm going to attend a conference for CABE, continuing that legacy of bilingual education as a maestra, working with a lot of our new immigrant students that are needing advocacy, even despite Prop 58. We still need to continue our work and our efforts to make sure that our newcomers have access to a proper education in their native languages. So, having grown up in East LA and having been the product of bilingual education, I think that has helped me be the translator for my family, but at the same time, learn to advocate for our communities as, I was taught to do at a very young age for my mother, So I think those are my roots, East LA, and growing up in the 70s, 80s, seeing what public education should look like, out of being a part of the Jaime Escalante programs, taking classes at ELAC while I was still a high school student, kind of gave me an opportunity to enrich myself, to be prepared to go into college. But at the same time, I know what good quality public education looks like because of what was fought in the Chicano movement in public education. So right now in 2024, when we look at public schools, there's still such a great need for advocacy that, as a teacher, I get to do something by being part of that systemic change that's needed and working from within. I have a seat at the table and I have control of, my 180 kids that I have every day, in the classroom. I'm able to advocate and give them a little bit of those seeds that were planted in me. Even the kids from Salinas will tell me, Miss, stop saying that you're from East LA. We like you. And I tell them, go Dodgers. I love what I do. I have great joy in being a maestra. And I try to give that joy to my students while at the same time empowering them for liberation. Like don't let somebody else's, stigmatism of who we are supposed to be or who we get labeled as, like we have our own struggles that we need to liberate ourselves from and have victory for our futures. There's that hope, that esperanza for the next 7 generations. And I think right now, more than ever, we need to be advocating for that change that's needed in our communities. Because I see at so many levels, like our public schools are under attack. And I say that by the charter movement, the privatization that's happening throughout California. The dismantling of public education is an indicator of where access to our own roots get affected, whether it's advocating for ethnic studies, bilingual education. This is our civil rights struggle in the modern day. And so I think I'm in the right place for the right time, because right now we need people to voice out, the needs for our youth and our communities.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Ana. So, when I was looking at your bio and you had on there professional agitator. I have never heard it put that way. When I think of you, I think she's a natural born advocate in the experience I've had and what I know of your work. It's just like it just comes so natural to you. I'm just curious to know, like, I know you talked earlier about your mom being an influence and how she stood up and spoke her truth. And I'm just wondering, in this world today, like, it's just so confusing. Like, what is the truth? What really is the truth of anything? And from what I know of you and my conversations with you, you've always been able to just speak truth, regardless of it's what anybody wants to hear or not hear, but the truth, how you've come to know it, and stand your ground. And I'm just curious to know, like, how are you able to do that, especially today when there's just so much opposition? Where do you get that strength and that courage to speak your truth? Today everybody's like, tell me anything, just don't tell me the truth. Like, it's so interesting that, like, even for me, and I'll use it myself as an example, like when they said, no, you don't need a stent for your heart, you're going to need a triple bypass. I was like, don't tell me that. like, don't, like, oh, I can't handle that. It's like too much truth, but it was, life-saving truth. But I know in the work that you do, and you have a lot to work with, and a lot of different people, different outlooks, different perspectives, especially in the school district, of how they see things and how you see things. And I know you pull a lot of your strength, and a lot of your medicine comes from your own journey and what you experienced growing up in high school, as a teenager. I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about that, where you find the strength and the courage to stand your ground and speak your truth and advocate, for others.
Sometimes my body will tell me, like, get up and speak, like, don't, like, I'll feel like something in my lower back, like, not that your blood is boiling, but like, you need to get up and speak. And there's a reason why you're here, like, no te quedes sentada, like, levántate, di algo, And, whether it's speaking before the Department of Justice back in, I think it was 2014, after the back-to-back officer-involved shootings of our campesinos in East Salinas, as a maestra, I could lose my job if I'm out there, advocating. But to me, I always felt like, if my truth is going to affect, my employment and how I feed my family, and this is something that's killing our community, like, I'm going to get up and speak. Maybe I wasn't meant to be here, Mm-hmm. And, if it's, speaking before the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, because we're demanding 1 mile buffer zones around our public schools throughout California. We finally were able to get 1/4 of a mile, but we're not happy with that. We still continue our fight because, there's civil rights violations, because through pesticides, they're taking away our life through cancer, through illness, diseases, like things that are affecting our communities. Like, we got to speak up, and pesticide reform is a big, important issue for me. A long time ago, I think it was in the 90s, I saw a video that Cesar Chavez helped produce about pesticides and his advocacy. And, that to me kind of planted the seed of me going towards the Salinas Valley, and being a maestra for the campesinos, our farm working communities, the most vulnerable community members in the Mexican American community and the Chicano movement, so to me, it's like, I look at my communities of indigenas that need advocacy, that need a voice, and I will get up and speak. And it doesn't matter to me if my school district might look at me like, there she goes again, But even my school board recognizes that sometimes we need to step out and be advocates for our communities. And I really appreciate my school board always supporting a lot of the things that I go speak up regarding what are the needs of our school district. We've brought in Mexican American studies, ethnic studies, and, having helped build that curriculum with the other fellow teachers. To me, like, I'm blessed to be in such a good school district that creates opportunities for our youth and our communities to feel recognized and acknowledged, And so to me, this is the places where I speak up, but, I feel like Creator has blessed me because He hasn't closed doors. He keeps on opening them. And that to me is like the blessings and the reminders that sigue, like, don't stop, like, keep on stepping up. Mm-hmm. This week, I did a 5-hour drive down here in the middle of the rain, because to me, it's like bilingual education is my next, like, go-to, in terms of what are my priorities, because there's such a great need. We look at the border and we see so many of our relatives, in such a great need, and so much of our students, back during the Obama administration, 51% of all deportations happened in Monterey County. Like, that was an attack on our communities. And right now, as I look at my classrooms of newcomers, I get students from all over Latin America, and there's such a great need because of the poverty and the need for opportunities that these youth are needing, So for me, it's like we need to continue to speak up, and I find my fuerza from what my students come talk to me about. Like, I had a student this last week, she was wanting to know how she could help immigrate her mother to this country. And I was like, wow, mija, And I had to get her back to the enseñanzas of like what I was taught. Like, okay, how do you as a child first prioritize right now your needs, you know? Ahorita, have you done your DREAM Act? Have you done your FAFSA? We need to build you up because at some point you need to do what you're needing for your family, but right now you're not there yet. Like, tienes que hacer esa profesional. You have to be able to be that professional, you know? You're not at a place right now where you could start helping others. You need to first build yourself up. And, you know, she was set to come back and we were going to work on the FAFSA for her, you know, and help her plan how to, you know, do community college and become that advocate for her family. We have to be patient sometimes, you know, like there's reforma inmigratoria, like I told her, is going to come. But right now, let's work on where you're at, mija. Like, ahorita, hay que cuidarte a ti, mija, you know, like reminding them. At some point we will see that, but right now we got to be where we're at.
So wise, such wisdom.
Oh, and I imagine too, there's a lot of heartbreak. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of feeling impotent. And, you know, when you want to do something and you see the need and yet your hands are tied or you really can't do something, you know, about the situation, like your consejos to this young person. So I imagine there's probably nights you go home and, you know, the pillow's wet with tears, you know, because of what has to be confronted. But I also know that for those that are instruments, and I'm going to use it in that way, those that are instruments of healing work, usually their lives have been through difficult times and have had challenges and have had things that they've had to bear because, you know, that's part of the connection to the passion that is felt so deep within. And I'm wondering, Ana, if you could share, you know, some of your personal life struggles that you've had to overcome in order to get to the place where you could be that vehicle of hope and of assistance to others that are in their struggles. Yeah.
Truth. Mm-hmm.
Mucha fuerza, like a lot of strength. I grew up seeing domestic violence. Like my first memories were as a young child, you know, like having to step up in front of my mom to protect her from my dad, you know? Mm-hmm. And doing that from such a young age up until probably the age of 15 when, you know, she finally decided to leave him. You know, like for me, that's where I get my, like, I use my 5'8" height, you know, like my size, my strength, you know, like of being able, no matter what, standing in front of people that are defenseless, you know, and, you know, it didn't matter if I was, you know, 4 years old, like I would just get in front, like even if the abuse was going to hit me, you know, to me, like I would defend my mom no matter what, you know. That's something that, you know, like I don't tolerate abuse, you know, like of any sort on anyone. Like I think by the time I was in elementary, my friends would come running to me and say, Ana, me están molestando, ayúdame. And, you know, like their kids already knew, like, oh, she'll come up and, you know, I would just show up and, you know, do a special neck move on somebody and make them get on their knees, apologize, do what you need to do. Don't mess with her anymore, and then let them go, you know? Like, grew up with WWF, so. But seeing that, like, another memory that I have was, I tell my mom, like, yo me acuerdo, like, I remember when we were evicted from Pico Union area. My mom's like, how could you? You were like 3 years old. I'm like, I remember the lights, I remember the people, and my mom was like, but you, how do you remember? I remember like everything went slow motion and walking down the stairs and just feeling like, where are we going to end up? I remember at the age of 7 being homeless in Skid Row and, you know, walking Central Market and trying to figure out like, how are we going to manage right now? My mom looks like she's not all there. She was trying to escape my dad. And we were walking around with suitcases in downtown LA. And I just remember sitting like near a counter and telling the taquero there, like, oiga, like, nos ayuda a mí y mis hermanas, no hemos comido nada y mi mamá, pues parece que no, like, she's not all there. Like, can you give us something to eat, like feeling like the desperation of like, what are we going to do tonight? And I got to keep an eye and a watch for my sisters and my mom, because she was distraught and she didn't know what was going to happen, Like homelessness, I know like even in my family, my youngest sister ended up being a homeless advocate for the Homeless Coalition in downtown LA because of what we had grown up with, and seeing, the importance of para los niños, because majority, once my sister told me, majority of the homeless in downtown LA back in the 90s, it was women and children and immigrant women and children that Los Para Los Niños got created. A lot of them escaping domestic violence, a lot of them, just trying to survive as immigrant women. For me, the homelessness, the domestic violence, that has always been something that sometimes has triggers on me, and affects, the decisions that I make for my life, I was married for 15 years, and out of that marriage, I had 2 sons. I think my ex-husband started pulling money from the banks and doing all kinds of weird stuff. And for me, that brought back memories of like, wow, you want to leave us out in the street? It really opened my eyes, like it took off the blinders of like, wow, I could face homelessness right now. Even as a maestra, like coming out of that, with the strength to be able to continue and raise my children after, losing everything, like to me, it was an awakening, and it helped me kind of get out of a phase where I was kind of not seeing clearly what my path was, I was thankfully in the Salinas Valley at that time that I started going back to my roots, my enseñanzas, of who I am as a mujer, to find the strength to be able to move forward, with my children, and raising them as a single mom. And, like my mom would always say, come back to LA. I'm like, nah, like I go, el día que no pueda, me voy a regresar. Pero for right now, I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to move forward. And, one of the things that I decided to do, the judge kind of said, we need good teachers in Monterey County, and I'll only let you leave if you get pink slipped. I did everything so that I could get pink slip, speaking out, doing stuff. But instead, it ended up opening doors within my career. I got tenured, and I was able to run AVID programs and college-bound programs, and create a name for myself as a maestra. And I always kept on asking Creator, like, show me a sign that I'm supposed to be here. And for me, it was, I never had my dad really around me after 15, and I wanted to have my boys have their father. Like my son said later, you might have lost a husband, but we finally gained a father, and in being divorced, he finally stepped up and was a father to them because he had them every other weekend. Ahora sí, you got to raise them. I'm not there.
Right.
Pero, and I gave that to my sons because I wanted to make sure they had a male figure in their life, and to me, that was very important, raising boys, that, my sons have that bond with their father. And like on my phone, he became just dad, because I had to remind myself, that's my kid's father. That's the dad. So I have to respect that, I appreciate the role men have in the lives of their sons. So to me, that took a lot of strength, even though I had to witness a lot of things that for me, I was like, but I got to be strong. I can do it on my own, even though I don't have my support network of my mom and my sisters, and I built my familia up in Salinas Valley. Like, I have strong family, from within, people out of BHC, Building Healthy Communities, Emily Morales, Chago. Like, I built my own little community. A lot of people in the Salinas Valley became, my extended family. And, I'm always invited in those circles. There was a group of women having chinachli circles that I really appreciate because, they were holding me as I was going through that journey, and helping me deal with the rage that I had inside of me. Because they kept on saying oh, we're going to have ceremonia and you're going to walk over. And I would always say, well, I'm not there yet. I'm going to be patient on that because ahorita I'm just embracing my rage. But it was more because there was still not that healing inside me, And I appreciate the Girasol circles when I was attending them for my young ladies to help do circles in my classroom. I was literally learning it for myself, and being able to graduate out of those courses was for me a place where I wanted to bring healing for myself as a mujer, Because, I keep on saying at some point my sons are going to give me grandbabies and I want to be ready for those little muchachitas,
Absolutely. Thank you for that, growing up so young and I could really relate to you when you're talking about, you had to watch your mom. Your mom wasn't, I had a very similar experience with that, my dad leaving the home and growing up really quick, and taking care of my brothers, and it's a lot of responsibility. I know, and we have to put away our childhood and be that adult and be that support for our mom and our siblings. But I can honestly say now, looking back, that really, all of those lessons that I learned there have just continued to guide me and support me through all the challenges that I've had to face and overcome. I'm just curious to know, I'm sure we could have 5 podcasts with you and not be done with your journey. I know that. Because there's just so many lessons that you had to navigate and find the strength to keep on going. And that's why it doesn't surprise me, Teacher of the Year. I know you've earned all that wisdom and that lesson from your own personal experiences. I'm just curious to know how you've been able to help now, working with the children, how to cultivate and share from your personal experiences, professionally, personally, and incorporate your traditional ways with them as you helped them to walk their journey now with the struggles that they're facing. How is it that you're able to apply all those life-learned lessons to help all the mijas and mijos out there to come into their power and their own, be an advocate for themselves, starting with themselves? I think that was so wise what you said earlier. No, mija, you got to take care of you first, and then we'll extend ourselves. That's such wisdom. That's a maestra right there. Yeah, absolutely. How have you been able to do that?
So I give my students their space. My mom says, go for your walk during lunch. I go, I can't. Tengo todas estas niñas que vienen and, they have their little circles and they come into my classroom during lunchtime and, I'll place a little music for them and, and sure enough, somebody will ask for a consejo or giving them that space to build their own little communities. And I want to say I have 3 little circles going on in the classroom during the lunchtime, but the kids are there, 4 days out of the week. And I also have them from homeroom. And that homeroom, I've had them for 2 years now. And we were separating them as Girasol and Joven Noble. And I had another teacher from our wellness center taking the boys out and having that conversation with the boys. And then I would keep the girls. This year, we don't have that group happening, but they're coming in during lunch and hanging out and making their own little space for themselves. And, it's a place where we might end up having conversations about driver's licenses and driver's licenses for undocumented and or FAFSA or DREAM Act. And, or we might be talking about the issue of how do I immigrate my parents, or I'm undocumented, what kind of job should I be pursuing? And I'm sharing with them Immigrants Rising, or I have another little group that's all about registering people to vote and creating advocacy and trying to create a new generation that is out there organizing for voter registration drives. And that circle also, they'll hang out during the week as well in my classroom. But giving them just that space where they're able to share out. In my classrooms, the seating arrangement, like for my history courses, is always in groups. And if I dare sit them in rows, they freak out. Why are you separating us? Why can't we be in our groups? And, I let my students choose their own groupings. So depending on when they come in through the door, I greet every child. And if I don't stand in the door to greet them, like I'll get an earful. Like, why weren't you at the door? Like, why didn't you greet us? Like, are you having a bad day? And I'm like, no, mijo, I'm so sorry. It's because I got this email and I got to respond,
Mm-hmm.
But and usually as they come in, it's like, I'm not that I'm capping out on them, but I have like certain sayings for each kid, like, oh, why weren't you here yesterday? Like, I'll remember who didn't show up and call them on that,
Mm-hmm.
Pero the individual acknowledgement of mentioning or saying their name as they walk in, or calling them by their last name, like to show them respect,
Mm-hmm.
Como all of that, they know that I'm in tune to what's going on in their lives, and I'm also in tune and giving them that opportunity to choose their groups, have their little conversations, and then I regroup them. Okay, today's task is this, and we're going to finish it. Si no, your group is going to stay, like...
Mm-hmm.
I discipline them in Spanish sometimes. So sometimes, like I'll get near them and I'll be like, vale más que hagas tu trabajo. Ya te vi, like, do you want me to call Appa or who do you want me to call? Like the kids know that I'll do a home visit. I have done one home visit in Salinas and everybody got the word around. Like, she goes visits you on Saturdays, calls out your name like the elotero, like don't... She'll snitch on you, That's, the kind of maestra I am. Like, I give my students, and they're like my kids, I give them their space to be able to collaborate, work together, have their own little circles, and feel welcome. Like, I'll tell one group, don't you dare roll your eyes if I'm moving a student to you. Like, no, I wouldn't like it. You're not going to do that. Like, I'll call them on whatever they're saying. If I hear racist terminology, I'm on it. Like, I start explaining to them our history as Mexicanos, as Chicanos, like looking at how much slavery came into Mexico. And, I give them a whole lesson that they're like, okay, yeah, I got it, Ms. Barrera. Like, I won't say that anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
But, just explaining to them at a level of what's needed in the classroom, like I'll stop my curriculum to address what might have happened in Salinas that day,
Mm-hmm.
Or if a student brings something up, like, hey, you know what, let's talk about it. Especially like right after COVID, like I'm always taking a pulse on how the kids are doing. I've had students where I've had to go to their services because suicide, like,
Mm-hmm.
There's been so much trauma in our youth that we have to constantly now be looking at the social emotional, like what's going on. And I think my curriculum allows for that, to tap into what's going on with the youth and then bring it back. I'm a history teacher. Okay, how can I connect that? And I'm always telling the students, like, I got you. It goes with this standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to discuss this, and I think our schools are now more in tune with really working with our youth. My students will make their own little passes. Like, I need to attend the wellness center, miss. No me siento bien. And like, they know they can come to me. Like, at the beginning, I would tell the kids, I don't know, mija, I don't even have the right titles to give you the right advice. Pero if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. Pero we got professionals that are social workers and trained psychologists that can help you. But if you want my advice, more power to you. Pero it's something that, now you start seeing that more often. Our youth are in tune with their needs, their social emotional needs. They're not milking the system. They're literally wanting services, wanting help, and I appreciate that in my school district, we have wellness centers at every high school. And so our kids know to go there. We have social workers, psychologists, and people that are trained in Chinachli and Joven Noble to be able to help support our youth, you know. Those are the things that my students are aware of, and I constantly remind them, you know, to keep an eye on how they're doing emotionally, you know. And then sometimes I remind them, also keep an eye on your parents because they might not be doing well, you know. You know, we'll sometimes talk about, I do a unit on the Great Depression, and I tell them like, hey, like 2009 wasn't that long ago. Like people experienced the same things that happened during the Great Depression. There was suicide there, you know, let's talk about that. And, you know, and then the kids will start sharing, yeah, my mom's been talking a lot about the bills and this and that. And I go, and how does that make you feel? Like, do you feel like that's going to restrict you from pursuing higher education? Do you have to go work? And in the Salinas Valley, like work in the fields is plentiful. Our youth are constantly being pulled in that direction because they need workers. And, you know, a lot of my Notre Dame college students come back to the Salinas Valley in the summers just to work in the fields because they make more money there. Mm-hmm. You know, so how do I keep in tune and connect? Like, why should we consider the Great Depression? Well, right now our economy is not doing too well. Like, have you guys really thought about how your families are and how much pressure you might be putting by including lo que quieres, what do you want for Christmas? You know, like, so I kind of am constantly, you know, connecting my lesson to something happening relevant to the current situation that we're facing right now. And economics is a big factor right now for a lot of our students.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, you know, it's obvious the care and the love that you have for your students, and that way that you have in relating to them, right? Because I think there's a lot of teachers, but they can't relate, and students don't feel them, you know. And so just to be able to have a teacher when things are not that great at home, that I can at least come in and connect with, you know. And so I imagine, I know you have had many students, and I'm just curious and would love to hear a story about one of those students that, you know, when you think about it, that student just pops up because of whatever, you know, whatever the experience or situation or whatever, but has really, really taken seat in your heart. Can you share one of those stories?
His name is Juan Baena, a little sixth grader from Gompers Middle School in South Central Los Angeles. And this little boy, like I ran my class like it was in Mexico. Like it was my first year teaching. It was back in 1997. And I would make the kids tuck in their shirts. And if somebody came into the classroom, they would stand up like out of respect. So it was like, you know, I must have been watching Un Carrusel de Niños. Like, so I was running the class like that. And Juan Baena would do everything me and my co-teacher would plant the seed for. And he did Students Run LA. So he got to run the marathon. He ended up by the 8th grade being valedictorian. I think he ended up at Dominguez Hills for a special like magnet school they had there at CSU Dominguez Hills. But he was our star student by the time he graduated. But this kid would try to beat me to be on campus like early in the morning. Like, and I would be like, I gotta leave. And why? Because I'm pretty sure Juan Baena is going to be out there in the cold, and he's going to be out there before I even get there. And I want to beat him. Like, I don't want him to be there before me. And this kid would constantly like be there earlier. Like, I mean, I remember trying to get on the 710 freeway from East LA to get down to the 105. Like, and sometimes I would go down Imperial Highway just so I wouldn't get the traffic on the 105, because I knew that kid was going to be there, and he would be there on weekends. We would do Students Run LA. He, you know, it was like, if I did a Saturday program, he would be there. If we did after school programs, he would be there. If after school Students Run LA, he would be there. And I was usually the teacher in the back of the pack. So because I was slower. But he was always like keeping me become a better teacher, get more involved, be there sooner, because our kids were hungry for the classroom. They were hungry for opportunities. And these were students that the programs that I ran there were ESL back in the day, so English as a second language. And to get a child to score back then, Gompers Middle School had the highest redesignation rate for English language learners. And I kept on telling the principal, I need Saturday school. I need after school. I need, and some, whatever I asked, the principal, Dr. Willard Love, would always be there to support every program that, I was trying to develop to help our ESL programs. And, to me, Juan Baena was that one student that I was always like, yes, Juan Baena, I got to be 10 times sooner, be ready, and, he was a star student. And I remember moving up grade levels to follow that class. And, and seeing him graduate with honors and, valedictorian, we were super excited. Me and my teen teacher, Miss Diane Kantak, I would give her the money and she'd do the baked goods for all the kids. Mm-hmm. And it was a village. It took a village to help. It was a great team of teachers that helped those students to excel well and do well in their schools. And whatever, tell a sixth grader to run a marathon, they did it. I only went to the 5K and that was it because I couldn't do more. But I was waiting for them at the end. But, it was these children that, kept us reminded of what it was to give full dedication to what we do in our profession and be there for our students. So if Juan Baena is out there, I'm in Salinas now.
I'm sure he'll never forget you either. That's beautiful. And that you cared, to get there for him, to show up for him. And make him to always feel acknowledged and to feel cared about, That's it. Those are the things I think of all the teachers I've had. Those are the things that stand out to me, very fortunate that way. I had a 7th grade teacher that would come and pick me up on the weekends because she knew my mom was ill and take me to a museum or take me, what do you want to learn? What do you want to know? And she didn't live nearby and she would drive all that way and take me to expose me to things that I was interested in and see how I can get involved in that and just inspire me. I was very fortunate. Miss Linda Dennis, never forget her. Never forget her. And I'm sure students will never forget you either. I have no doubt. I'm just curious to know, you've worked in so many different school districts and you've seen so many different issues that are going on. Is there a main issue that you see that the students are struggling with now that really needs a lot of attention? I know there's a lot of different levels. We could go on forever, but is there something that you just say, this is really prominent right now that we got to really address this with our youth?
To me, it's our undocumented population. Mm-hmm. They're not eligible to apply for DACA, and so you have all this generation, what do I study for college? They have to be their own contract, they have to have their own small business to be able to have an ITIN number. Cause there's I have friends that have gotten their master's degrees, but they can't practice their profession because they don't have a social security number. They're not documented. The programs that Obama initiated with DACA, with Trump, there's all these generations that keep on turning 15 and are not able to apply, are not able to get jobs. So there's a great need for our undocumented population. And you think about DACA, that was 2007 that you could qualify. A lot of my students got here 2016, 2017, post-pandemic. They wouldn't even qualify under the rules and regulations of DACA. And we need a comprehensive immigration reform at a federal level. But California needs to do more for all these generations that are graduating high school. They got their high school diplomas. They're getting the California Dream Act. They got their master's degrees. They got their bachelor's degrees. but they're not able to work because the county can't hire them. The public schools can't hire them. The city can't hire them. So how do the cities, the counties, the local officials in California create pathways to create contracts for like a nonprofit? Your nonprofit could hire social workers to come work for you and be able to get their state license if you contract it out. But the state of California is the one issuing those licenses, and they require that the person have a full-time employment through an agency that is hiring them because they have a social security number. How does the state legislature in California create those pathways like we've done for AB 60 for the driver's license or AB 540 for being able to go to community college? Like, there needs to be a pathway for all these generations to be able to have access to employment. We've already invested in their education, K through 12. We've invested through the California Dream Act. And now they got these degrees, they're professionals, but they're not able to practice their profession. They're not able to be teachers. They're not able to be social workers. They're not able to have those jobs because they're missing a social security number. So how do we in California create opportunities for them to get contracted labor? Just using ITIN numbers. I think every school district needs to consider that, as well as state, county positions, city positions, because that is the big need. And I'm just looking at it from the Salinas Valley, you know, like I can name you all the students that by senior year, they're coming to me and they're Miss, remember you talked about FAFSA and DREAM Act? Pues yo no califico para FAFSA. And those are my dreamers. That I have to have another level of a conversation. Like, okay, you want to choose a career, but you got to choose a career where you could become a contracted individual. Because I already know you can't be a social worker. Because I have friends that are stuck there. They can't be social workers.
Yes, terrible. Yeah, it's definitely a system that's broken, you know, that really needs to have those pathways to connect at those intersections to go forward.
Well, I was going to say California is very capable because they've done it for medical insurance for undocumented. They've done it for driver's license. They've done it for the DREAM Act. I think now it's time for them to start doing it for the employment, because we're not seeing any comprehensive reform happening at the federal level.
Yeah.
So California needs to step up and do something at the level of employment for all these generations that we've invested in.
And it definitely would be in its interest, right? Because there's the contribution, that's the giving back that would just make us all better. It really would. You know, our time is up, and I tell you, every time we have these conversations, the times go so quick. Mm-hmm. But before we leave, Ana, can you give us a consejo? Because we're talking about healing generations. Leave us with a consejo to heal the next generation.
Self-care. Really look into what waters you're currently navigating. Like the rains that we've been having right now. Like, that's our life. Our life, de vez en cuando, you will have rivers that are going to make you lose your balance, make you figure out where your fuerza comes from. Where is your strength? And you got to hold on to that strength to be able to find those shallow waters, that place of peace in the midst of your raging rivers. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the rivers are going to cease. They keep on coming, especially for our community, our immigrant community, our urban, whether you're in the urban areas. You know, I see our youth, you know, being, you know, like we talk about the school to prison pipeline. It keeps on coming back, right? Like all these, you know, being stricter, being more punitive in discipline, and really, how do you protect our communities from, like, examples of what's happening in El Salvador? Like you see a lot of people trying to crack down, build a wall, do this, you know? We're constantly bombarded, right? And we need to remember who we are, where our strength comes, our ancestors, you know, my great grandmothers, my abuelitas, their medicine. tapping into that. Like right now, the medicine that I used this 2 days ago is we sat down, we made capirotada, and just the planning of capirotada, the what we needed to do, all the ingredients, and then giving it to my niece. Like, mija, you're gonna, whenever you're ready, we'll be ready to help you make this, you know? And teaching her like the enseñanzas and, you know, finding that space where we need to remind ourselves of our strength, our fuerza, you know? And the rivers are going to come, and we need to, you know, look for our medicine. Like for me, I don't know, but my medicine's always food. And I find healing in making the food. Like I think this week I'm visiting my family down here. But like to me, it's like I always come with a list of recipes, and we're going to have to write these recipes down, take pictures, you know? But in the process, we're constantly taking care of ourselves and finding a place of joy, a place of like liberation for our souls in the midst of those rivers. Like, find your medicina. What is it that brings you peace? What is it that brings you healing? Who are those individuals that you need around you to sustain you, right? If I'm in Salinas, I have my group of comadres, right? And I think it also involves food. I think yesterday one of my comadres was making albóndigas, and I was like, I saw what you posted, save me a plate, you know? It's something that we need to constantly remind ourselves, like these rivers are going to come at us, and we need to know what our community looks like, what does our circles look like, and reach out to them when you need them, because they need to ground us in finding those safer waters, finding us those places of peace, joy. Like, you know, I've had a lot of challenges in my life, pero siempre payasa, like always, like, you know, like, I think even in high school, I would always, you know, be not a class clown, but be a little payasita, like, you know, coming up with things or, you know, doing something funny, you know, just to make people laugh, because that's been a medicine that we need, you know, like laughter is a medicine for me, and being a clown sometimes is, you know, a healing for me. And so we need to find our medicine wherever it might come, you know,
Beautiful.
And have our círculos. And that's what I give my students. I don't mind if they're giggling, if they're laughing, you know, like to me, it's like, I'll be like, what's the chisme? You're interrupting my instruction. ¿Cuál es el chisme? We all need to know, you know. But that's something that we need. We constantly need to learn to navigate our waters, find our fuerza, our strength, and try to gravitate to a place of tranquility and peace, even if we're in the middle of those rivers flowing.
Beautiful. Well, as promised, no disappointment. And I'm sure in hearing the conversation, there was a lot that you could take from the words of the Maestra Ana Barrera. And I want to thank you. Thank you for joining us again in this Healing Generation podcast. We really wish that if you're out there and you're struggling, there are places and people that you can connect to that will be happy, just like this Maestra, to walk you through and support and guide you through those challenges that might come up, especially with the students attending our educational system. Well, comadre, our time is up. It's time to go, and we are just very grateful for this conversation here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maestra Ana, for being so willing and courageous to speak your truth, for all your years of advocacy and, you know, trying to support our children, that next generation, and the community. You know, you've done it so beautifully. It's very obvious, you know, your ancestral teachings of dignity, love, respect, and trust. It's very obvious in knowing your students that they just love you so much, and they trust you. You know, they trust you, and that's so important. It's so beautiful to see that you're continuing to have those sacred circles, even if they're in your classroom with the students, so they can come together and talk about things that, you know, maybe nowhere else they're going to have that opportunity to process, you know, and at least they're building that trust with each other. So powerful, so powerful. I thank you for that. May Creator just continue to bless you and walk with you, hover over you, and protect you as it's very obvious you are a vessel for Creator and ancestors for guiding the next generation.
No, thank you, Maestra Susan and Maestra Debra. Thank you very much for having me in your program, and I appreciate all the work that you do, and can't wait to see both of you back in Salinas doing another círculo for teachings for another group of maestras, because we need to build those circles, in our region. But thank you. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Gracias.
So with that, bendiciones until our next podcast.
Adelante.
Sí se puede.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.